Well, when I was 24, I really wanted adventure. I wanted to travel, and I wanted a challenge, particularly a physical challenge, because I was tough. I was about 5'4" and 135 pounds. Obviously, I'm no longer 135 pounds. But I was also very patriotic. So there was only really one choice for me, and that was to enlist in the Army, and I did that. But since I was tough, I wasn't going to be an Army administrative person or a journalist in the Army. I was going to go into the infantry. And then I thought that's not really tough enough. So I wanted to be infantry airborne, and that was my goal, to be a paratrooper. So I got down to basic training, and the first couple of weeks seemed to go pretty well. There was a lot of marching and saluting, and I wasn't much of a marcher, but I was a very good saluter. And I always felt, well, if that's all they looked at in the Army, I would have made general. But after those first couple of weeks, I was having a problem. I was getting irritable, I was pent up, I was speaking very fast, my speech was pressured, my head felt like it was going to explode because of that pressure, and that sort of evolved into irritability. I had an outburst or two, and I was really having the mother of all mania. And I knew I was sick. And I asked, the sergeant if I could go to the hospital. Now, imagine that, wanting to go to the hospital, to a psychiatric ward. I begged them to send me there, and they finally did, and I really needed to go. And I should say that before I was in the Army, I also had some what we'll call mood episodes, and some mania and depression. And going into the Army, I felt, well, I can handle this. I can manage this. This isn't too tough. I had been taking lithium, but I took myself off lithium, and that resulted in the Guinness World Record of biggest manic phase, and I was the holder of that record. So when I got into the hospital, started on lithium again, and I felt a little better, but it seemed that there was no way I was going to stay in. Not that I didn't want to necessarily, but I was just too sick. And was waiting around for my discharge. That took a couple of months in the hospital. And one day, just hanging around in the ward, which is all we did, the nurse came up to me and said, the captain is there, and that he was waiting for me. And it was Captain Ortiz, who was the commander of the unit I was in. So I had no idea why he was there. I was very nervous and terrified. And I went out, and he was sitting down in the day room. That was where we hung out, right, in the day room. And he also looked a little uncomfortable and, frankly, a little nervous. And I went over and spoke to him. And he asked me if I could come back to the unit. And that kind of astonished me because I was so ill, I'd been so manic. And I didn't know what to say to him. I mean, I knew I couldn't go back, but I just said, no, sir, I'd like to, but I just think I'm too ill. I can't do that. But at that moment, I really was quite ashamed. And I was ashamed for many years about my military exploits, although I had tried so hard. But what this captain did for me is he restored, a sense of self. He had confidence in me, and certainly made me feel unashamed, or he didn't want me to be ashamed. He didn't criticize me at all. And, but, I was ill, and I was discharged. Didn't get a dishonorable discharge, a Section 8, or anything like that. I got a regular honorable discharge with the medical board. But that discharge didn't allow me to join any of the other services. And I was disappointed because there were 3 or 4 that I hadn't been in yet, and I'd wanted to try those. But, I'm a determined fellow and a fighter. So when I got out of the Army, I still wanted to be involved with the military somehow. And I heard that the Navy had this program. There's another one, right? And it was for civilian teachers. And I applied for that. And I thought I was accepted, but actually I was rejected. And I was rejected because I was taking lithium. And well, that was a disappointment. But I really wanted to do this. I mean, this was a very exciting prospect for me. I was young and still adventurous. And so I appealed it, and it took some time, and it went up pretty high, not to the president, but it went up to, high in the command in the part of the Navy that this would have taken place in. And it was overruled, and I was allowed to serve as a teacher, a history teacher. I was on an aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean, and I had all these great sailors and Marines that I taught history to, and they were fabulous, and we all had a great time. And all the time I was teaching, I was taking lithium on this aircraft carrier. So that was my military career.